the idea of me telling you, go look at that video, pick something you're interested, and then write about it. How it impacts you personally, how you're able to overcome it, and how it impacts society, and how society is able to overcome it. Can you give me more guidance? No, that's it. But I'm 17, I have zero experience. Well, then you're going to fail the class. You know? And so you need to understand that GPS, or what we call conformity, law-abiding citizens, you know, it's a really, really good thing. Why? It removes you thinking, reflecting, examining, feeling. And just in case you think, feel, reflect, and examine, the law, the GPS is right there to trim you, to make sure that you don't go too far from the rituals of life, okay? From what your parents have taught you, what you've learned in school, what society expects from you. Then you run into a Socrates. It's not a good place to be. You know, I think it's the third commandment that you should never use the word God in vain. Keep it off of your tongue. You know, it's kind of like Will Smith telling Chris Rock that keep the name of my wife out of your filthy mouth. That's what it is. You know, that God is far too sacred. That, as Kierkegaard would say, when you speak of God, the image of God must be present inside you. And you can't really talk about God casually. On the inside, you need to have a good amount of fear, and you need to tremble. And as you say God, your voice has to shake like God, because there is fear and trembling in it. There is shame in it, insignificance in it, that you are nothing in the presence of God. So it's best for you to just keep your mouth shut. I think when it comes to someone like Socrates, Socrates needs to be in the third commandment. Keep the name Socrates out of your tongue or out of your mouth. He's far too sacred. Why? Socrates destroys, you know, the social GPSs. However way you have been socialized, that needs to go away. That's what Socrates does. Because what happens when you're socialized is that whatever your passion is, whatever bird lives inside you that wants to sing, society says, okay, you know what? We're going to create this cage, and then we're going to put this bird of yours, your passion, into this cage, and you can sing. This bird inside you can sing, but it has to sing in an academic way. Okay? You want to talk Socrates? Fine. Make sure it falls within the categories of the SLOs. That somehow you can fit that in language so you can give quizzes to students. Okay? So as long as you can do that, that's fine. But the moment you create a Socrates that says, what is the function of going to school? How do people listen? Can really education take place at all? Can you really give philosophy students quiz? Or is that an oxymoron? That philosophy is something that takes place in time. You know? So if you were to give Malcolm X a quiz about what it means to be African American at the age of 15, he would probably fail. At the age of 30, he'd probably pass. So is it Malcolm who failed, or is it the instructor who failed? You know? So the problem with Socrates is that he creates a different kind of a GPS for you. And it's a GPS that goes against the social GPS. Casual conversation will no longer work. You need it to have depth and meaning. That can only happen if you reflect, which means you need to be philosophically minded. And by philosophically minded, I don't mean like you have read Plato or dialogue or the dialogues of Plato. I mean that you must have been touched by something that creates pain inside you to the point that you begin to think about things. So, good morning, Genny. So, it's best to keep your GPS very, very, very simple. You're probably saying, well, that didn't really answer my question. And Chris? Beginning, I know that you just came in. Do you have anything we should talk about? You know, the other thing that I think you should consider is that it takes a long time to create a GPS. It really, really does. And for someone to just come in, I'll give you an example. And it's something I wasn't really myself aware of until I got a little older. In 2007, I left Laney. I was hired here in 2004. I left Laney, I resigned, and I went to a different school. It was a much better school, very organized. It was protected by, I think, 4 churches. It was a Republican environment. About 14,000 students. It's a brand new campus. I mean, you could throw your food in the bathroom floor and then just pick it up and eat it. That's how clean this place was. 90% of the student population were Caucasians, white. I think I was the only Middle Eastern instructor. I was much more animated than I am now, way back then, and my language was very foul because I didn't have the maturity to speak properly, and it was a cheap way of getting attention, a cheap way of making students interested, you know. And so I was there for only a semester, less than a semester, where I had to resign. What had happened is my class started with only 37 students, and within a week, from 37, it went to 120 students. Students began to talk to their friends, and their friends would drop their classes and then join mine. And when I was younger, to some extent, it was like being a tsunami. I was very passionate, very forceful in certain ways, and students became very, very attracted. And so they began to like major in philosophy and humanities. They would go to their parents and they would ask difficult questions. They lost their religion, some of them. And a lot of awful things happened to students. And in my naivete or ignorance, I assumed that all of this was really good. Okay. What I had failed to realize is that first, it takes a lot of blood and sweat on the part of parents to raise their kids, to give them a Christianity that gives them meaning, purpose, and GPS. You know, that says, don't have sex until you're married. Don't smoke. Don't drink. Don't watch porn because God is everywhere. I mean, these are good stuff, man. Okay. And because I had a job and because I was making money, I made money have no value. I didn't care if you came from a poor background. I didn't care if your parents had divorced and you had no money. None of those things mattered to me. I just wanted students to become interested in ideas. Okay? And so I began to destroy all the GPSs that guided people's psyche, made them relatively healthy, inwardly. And so for that one semester that I was there, I had students come sit in the office from 6 in the morning until 10 at night. And I was a single man then. Okay. And then I got a call from my dean, and then I got a call from the VP, and then I got a call from the president, and then I got from the human resources. For a variety of different reasons. One of them was that, well, you can't have 120 people in a classroom that only fits 40. It's fire hazard. And the things you're teaching these kids, they're not part of the curriculum. And so I realized it's just a bad place to be. I'm not going to survive there because I have the entire, system against me. Now, almost 20 years have passed from that time. Now, married, children, a bit older now. I think differently now. I process things differently now. I see things differently now. And sometimes in private, now in public, I say it was such a good thing for that particular school to force me into resignation. Because now students don't have to hear foul language. Parents don't have to fight with their kids so that they could protect the GPS that they so painstakingly created inside them. I know a lot of people rail against being socialized. One of them was like Jean-Jacques Rousseau, an idiot. But the truth is, it takes us a long time to kind of create a sort of pathway for people to just walk and just live their life and hopefully die in peace. You don't need to be a Socrates creating difficulties for people. I don't think Socrates really understood that what he was doing. I think if you're a good teacher, you should just mind your own business. If someone knocks on your door, study them, and then little by little understand their capacity, what they're ready for, what they're not ready for. The things they're not ready for, don't do. The things they're ready for, slowly do, so that they could have a glimpse, of various things. So, that's what a cult is. Cults are there to protect the masses from getting excited about things that they can't really afford. My brother just bought a Tesla. He just loves to save the environment. And so he keeps telling me, Amir, buy a Tesla. Come sit in my car and see how it is. I'm very lucky because, I just like gas guzzler cars, like a Hummer and those things. But jokes aside, he doesn't consider the fact that I have expenses, that he's advertising this Tesla to me, and should I become a customer through his just relentless blitz of advertisement every single day, I will have no choice but to go in debt, like $70,000 for a car that basically does, from point A to point B. And I think if he was a wise man, if he was to see my bank account, my everyday expenses, he would say, Amir, the Avalon you have that dates back to 2000, that's fine. Maybe you should buy a Tesla when you're 95, when you can't see or hear, or, your joints are no longer moving, so that your car can just self-drive you here and there. The difficulty with that particular argument that Socrates should remain in the cave and just wait and wait and wait, the truth is, evolution doesn't work that way. Evolution is always about removing mistakes, removing deformities, blemishes, removing ugliness and replacing them with things that are attractive. It's like what you do. You go to your room, And you've been doing okay with all the messiness of your room, but today you just go in there and something strange about you has happened. Maybe you were listening to some music, maybe you read a book, maybe you went to a class, and now you have this desire for simplicity, for cleanliness, for beauty, and you're inspired. And you look at your room and you say, no. And then you say, today I'm going to spend my entire day cleaning this room. And that's what evolution is. You know, it gets rid of all the things that you find unattractive. Which means this. If, for example, you come to class and you keep asking questions, something about me will automatically and naturally, organically will say to me, Julian is an attractive young man. Not so much attractive in body, but attractive in mind. He's curious, he's interested, he asks good questions. So does Charles, okay? And then what happens is that as you ask questions and as you make comments, I begin to realize there are some errors in the way you think. Errors in the way you think about relationships, about marriage, about kids, about education, about happiness, about meaning, about value. And what happens in that scenario is that I have no choice, but very much like what happens in nature, where it's always correcting and recorrecting itself, I have no choice but somehow go inside you and change the way you think. Make it better. Change the way you feel. Help you feel through the way you think first, through reflection, examination. And little by little what will happen is that on the inside you become clean. But the price you pay is that the old GPS has to be removed. And that's going to create a lot of chaos. And I suppose the point I'm trying to make is that the only way you can make something better is by destroying it first. And it's painful for both parties. You know, I remember, you guys don't know this too well, but when I was young, I had run into a man. His name was Hussein. And so, I suppose emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, he had kind of gone inside me and made a good amount of changes. And so in a gathering, my father, who enjoys talking about politics and religions, he said a couple of things, and then I, as a 19-year-old punk, objected in front of like 50 people. And then I remember that night, I got a call from him, Hussein. He said, I need you to come to my shop tomorrow. So I went to his deli, and he said, I never want you to see you object to your father in public or even in private. And the truth is, I objected to my father in public because of what Hussein had done to me. But what he didn't understand is I am objecting to my father in public and perhaps even embarrassing my father in public because of him, Hussein. So the real culprit is Hussein. But it pained him to see that I am bold enough, sometimes even crude enough, to say things without really understanding what I'm talking about and how my speech impacts someone like my father and how other people will begin to view my father, of course, negatively. And so there are lots of things to consider. If, for example, you came to my office and said, Amir, I'm in this relationship and I have been with this woman for like 4 years and I really, really like her and I want to marry her, but your class has done A, B, C, D where I'm uncertain now. What I will say is, Julian, don't ever come to my class again. I'll give you an A. We have another 10 weeks left. Don't come to my office. Don't come to my class. Don't email me. Once the effect of the class goes away, once the effect of the office goes away, get married to Jennifer. Live a long, happy life. If you want to think once in a while, fine. But don't let these ideas destroy what you have. Okay? Because when your GPS goes away, you walk in the dark. And no one knows when you're going to find the flashlight. No one knows when you're going to find the Diogenes who's going to walk into your life with a lit lantern. It may be never. And in a culture such as this, where everybody suffers from depression and loneliness, where everybody is medicated, is looking for a therapist, we don't need to fall in that category. If you have something, if you're living a life that's working for you, continue with it. Don't allow any Socrates, anyone to contaminate it. Yeah. But the truth is, you can't do that. Because you can't survive in life without thinking and reflecting and examining things. Because society is there to destroy you. And they'll destroy your relationship, they'll destroy your kids, whom you love. They'll give them the wrong education, wrong ideas. And without being a really, really good philosopher, you will be devoured by a very uncaring society. So,
psychology be a good thing to drop? I mean, psychology be a good major? Like,
yes. These days, if you're able to get a degree where you can become a good therapist, a good psychologist, it's a very, very booming market in America. I'll come to you. I'll pay you $150 an hour. Have you watched Sopranos? So what you have is Anthony Soprano. He's like a mob boss. He has everything going for him, And yet, despite being the boss, despite being rich, having power to bully all sorts of people around, he sees a therapist. And he pays her about $500 an hour. You know how many hours you have to work at In-N-Out or Home Depot to make 500?
2 days.
His therapist makes it in 45 minutes. That's a good business. So instead of majoring in finance or economics or philosophy, yeah, man, do psychology and become a therapist. You don't even have to say anything to your patients. Just let them talk. And then take their money. Because it's very difficult, first of all, to change people. Second, it's very difficult to heal people. People can have insights, but just because you see something, it doesn't mean you can change it. It just means you can see it. Once you see something, it's usually unpleasant for those who go to therapy. And then you have to deal with the emotions created by the things that you see. And then it's going to take you a while to adjust. Then you have to find a way to fix the things that you see. Now you need tools. The therapists don't have those tools. All they can do is help you see. But once you see, where you're going to go now? You need a different kind of a healer to give you the proper tools, show you how to use those tools to help with what you now see. And most often, you can't do this in a single lifetime. It's difficult. Chris? Kenny? Julian?
I don't know how to. as civilization kind of progresses, like the average person, the more comfortable life. Now we're kind of faced with, as a society, with like certain problems that we didn't have to face, like religion and sexuality and how conflicting it is. Therapists are the answer to help people manage the emotions that come about from these like social constructs. They'll be able to person how to handle the emotions that come about when faced with like different perspectives of what a human being is.
No, I don't think just because civilization evolves, we necessarily become better people or we become wiser. Because remember, I think every new thing comes with own unique language. First, you have to learn the language. Then you have to understand what this language is about, what's inside the words, the sort of meanings and feelings and all that stuff. And you have to be a student. You know, people for the most part are consumers. To learn anything, to understand anything, you have to be a student. And students and consumers are two different things. You know, a student is a consumer for learning. A consumer is simply there to take what other people have made. Okay? Let me first apologize because your question was long and it had too many different things. And I kind of just lost focus because I thought you were saying one thing, then it kind of veered into all sorts of different things. So I think you should look at civilization as a grand piano, you know, sitting on a stage. There are some people who will simply look at it. There are some people who will touch it. There are some people who will just play a couple of keys. There are some people who will take lessons for a couple of weeks. Some people will take lessons for about 2 years. Some people who will take lessons for about 10 years and they will play really, really well as long as they have the music sheet in front of them. And once in a while, you will find a Peter Buka, or once in a while, you will find a Mozart, where they're really, really, really passionate. And I think every branch of society, whether 10 years ago, 100 years ago, a million years ago, or 10 years from now, 20 years from now, a million years from now, you have all these different people. Life is a grand piano. There are those who will simply look at life, never participate. There are those who will participate, that will play it really, really badly in a way that will hurt your ears. You know, there are those who will try but fail and then give up. There are those who will try and will be content with what little they have learned. There are those who will play by the rule and understand, you know, how to play life relatively well. And there are those who are consumed by their curiosities about life. And these are the mavericks that life basically creates, one in every century or so. You know, they're like the Lionel Messi, or the Cristiano Ronaldo, or the Muhammad Ali, or the Manny Pacquiao of life. You know, you don't get very many Socrates. You get a lot of Aristotles, but not very many Socrates. Well, I hope you guys have a very, very, very nice time with your family and friends, that the turkey is not as dry as it usually is. Yeah. So, have a nice weekend. Have a nice day. I will see you guys next week, Monday. There is no school tomorrow. So it's good to see all of you. Take good care. Feel free to stay, I'm just saying.